Hello and welcome to the final, yes, that is correct, the final SRC podcast of the season. We are late into June and the season finished in mid-May. I apologize on behalf of everyone. Joining me, Big M, for this final rendition is Double R, Mr. Rob Reese. Good evening. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. It feels like we'll be kicking pre-season pods off now.
I know it won't be too long. I got to give her at least 8 weeks. Oh,
Yeah,
maybe six, maybe four. I don't know. This is getting terrible now. Absolutely terrible. Uh, I mean, one good thing about the fact that this has somehow dragged on so long is that we have had the new fixtures for next season, so there is some sort of news to discuss. Uh, the league fixtures haven't changed a great deal. The only noticeable difference that obviously we've had a little chat off here that we can really see on viewing is one of the break weeks in November has been moved into mid-October. So it's like 4 games on, 1 game off, 3 games on, 2 games off. And it was slightly different last season. But the Cup has a slightly different format this year. Take it away, Mr. Reese.
yeah. So I think the cup was probably the contentious point of last season. Sort of, it all jumped in the middle of spring, and it was done for most teams before you knew it. The cup final finished well before the league season was sort of decided, but the obviously the two pools still exist. They're slightly different on last season. Obviously, 5 teams in each, and you will play 2 home and 2 away. But then, whereas last year it was obviously the pool winners went straight into a final. This year, obviously, it's a bit like how the FIFA World Cup works, where you've got the winner of Group A take on the runner-up of Group B, and vice versa. Obviously, that means there are semi-finals. There's also a plate competition, which is it's something of old, really. It's only ever kept around now in sevens tournaments, but I really like it. It sort of adds a lot more fixtures. It gives everyone something to fight for. So if you going into round five, obviously there's just you get one bye week. Round 4 or 5, and you've lost your opening three. You no longer chuck out that's a bunch of under 18s, under 20s that basically just fielding a side. You actually respect the competition a bit and sort of think, well, actually, there's a plate competition here. And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me to see someone big win that plate as well.
Yeah, it is a really good format to put in with only the two competitions. I know a lot of clubs only have two major competitions, but if you drop down, obviously you got things like the West Wales Cup played, you got district leagues. I know there's seconds, but
Yeah,
boys,
mid
there's
district.
yeah, there's so many competitions that actually run, alongside your normal league season. So it's nice to open this up, and it doesn't completely shut out. You know, if we go on this season, it was really a top four, fifth, and then the rest. It doesn't shut out, the bottom half from earning some silverware. You know, like what was it when we looked at it? Carmarthen Quins, who else were there hadn't won a cup?
Carmarthen, Aberafon, and I think that was it. Or maybe Swansea hadn't won anything recently. That was
Yeah.
it. Swansea, Quins, and I think Aberafon.
So, this is a genuine opportunity for these guys to get some silverware. Might not be the cup that they actually want, but it is a piece of
Yeah.
silverware. And,
Well,
like you
that's
just said, you go into your final round of pool fixtures in the cup. Even if you have lost your opening 3 games, all it's going to take is one win, and you're in with a shout to the plate. So brilliant as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? It's a bit like the sort of the Challenger Shield this year. You don't go around shouting at you the SRC Challenger Shield winners. Ebervale never really did that. They took some photos and sort of and it was mentioned, but it's not something that you write articles about and celebrate and have a night about. But equally, it's something for the club who wins this plate competition. It's something extremely proud, and especially if it is an underdog, should we say, one of the bottom five from last season, especially if it's someone who hasn't won a competition in recent memory. That's going to mean a lot, and it keeps everyone interested as well. What you'll see is people turn out for these games. The semi-finals always get a good turnout. Doesn't matter who's there, right? It could be Swansea and Carmarthen, it could be anybody, but it'll be a better turnout than they would be for a normal game because there's a semi-final, and then vice versa for the plate final. There's going to be some good rugby on show. There'll be a good crowd on show, no matter who's involved, and somebody walks away with a bit of silverware. And I'll be honest, one thing that I hope that they do this year, and they did it for the league, is medals. So years gone by, typically players never got medals. For the cup this year, unless they were retrospectively done, I don't believe either Llandovery or Ebervale players had any medals. But for obviously the league final, players had them for that, and that's what you want as well. Just brings it all together, sort of one sort of package, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's something you'd like to see. I mean, you go to any age grade competition, no matter what, you go to a festival and, the minimum you're walking away with is a participation medal. And, I'm not saying give medals out to the teams that finish fifth in both these groups,
Yeah,
but, for that final, it's a massive occasion, to make a final, given the current format they're now playing in, it's, incredibly hard just to, get into that position in the first place. So to have something physical to remember it by would be brilliant. The only thing I'm thinking of now is there's no judgment day for the regions. Could a plate and a cup final be a double header at the Millennium? I think is in with a good shout, to be fair.
yeah. It was when I spoke to John Alder back the last year. There was always sort of a want to get one of the two finals, either, and this is on about the cup, as in the cup as it was at the time, or the league final at the stadium. And I think now we've got a plate competition as well. There was a very early thought about adding it as a third leg in the Judgment Day competition. Obviously, that's gone. You've added a plate in, and as you say, this works basically like finals day. You always have the bowl, plate, and cup anyway. Why not have the plate and cup for this? And then whether you want to bump it up and stick the cup before it as well, or whether you want to leave it on its own, which I would probably do. Um, but yeah, it sort of all starts to fit the wider jigsaw. And I know at the moment that's what the union are doing, is keeping it all open. If anyone's looked at the fixtures for the league and the cup, there's a lack of asterisks at both of the finals, and that means that there's not been declared home advantage, and that is pretty much because they're waiting nearer the time, as they did last year, to see if the ground availability works for either neutral or highest seed. And I say, let's get one in the stadium. You freed up another week in the calendar. I mean, Christ, what is it? The 7th of March are the finals. That's well before all the schools and the women's and all the sort of community game plays. Play it off the back of the Six Nations.
Yeah, so that is what they have done this year. Instead of having all them break weeks during the cup, it is a straight run through. So it'll start on the
Yeah,
last week of January. Well, sorry, it's not even the last week of January. It's the
24.
the last but 1 week of January, because obviously there's the 31st is a Saturday, and then
31st is round two.
and then it's 7th, 14th, 21st, 28th
Yep.
for the semis, and then bang in for the cup final. So that's 7 games on the bounce. So that'll take some doing. You
Yeah.
needing to win 3 of them, then 3 of those first, you know, 5 rounds you'll be playing. You need to win 3 of the first 5 rounds. Obviously, you're only playing 4. So there's a that break somewhere, but depending on where your break is, if it's that first week, then you go in 6 weeks without a rest. So however this draws are lined up is going to favour certain teams,
Well, that's just it.
more than others.
I mean, you look at it, right? From last year's perspective, it's Cardiff and Ebervale with the buys in round one, so they'll play 6 weeks straight through. But what an absolute corker of round five. You've got Cardiff and
Yeah,
Pontypool. Newport would have played all their games. So similar to last year when it was Ebervale, Newport and Pontypool had played all their games. You've got that sort of swing. And equally, you've got Ebervale at home to Llandovery, which you would imagine at that stage would decide who tops that group as well.
Exactly, very tasty. So you'd think this is of those big four, Cardiff, Ebbw and Llandovery all playing in round five, it is slightly favouring the current league champions Newport. So an interesting one to follow on for next season. And I, for one, can't wait to start seeing more rugby, especially SRC rugby. So on to the real reason we are here. We are here to discuss the top five of the SRC table in our second part of our little review program. Obviously, the first part went out a couple of weeks ago where we discussed the bottom five teams: Swansea, Carmarthen Quins, RGC, Bridgend, and Aberravan. Now it's the turn of the top five. So we'll start in fifth place, the team that missed out on that coveted top four spot, Pontypool. Now, not much has really changed for Pontypool. They've missed out this year. They missed out the season before. I think it might have been a bigger gap. Yeah, so
Yeah, they were deducted 2 points last year as well for their inability to field the side up at RGC as well. So that probably grew the gap that year. But
yeah, so
there's
from what I can see, it's gone from a 13-point gap to a 9-point gap. But given that deduction, like you said, that's 2 points. So not a great deal of difference.
and fewer games this season, right? So if you work it out points difference per game, it actually works out slightly more.
We'll have to do that. Probably should have done that. You're making me look bad already.
Get the
So,
calculator out.
uh, obviously, the first game of the season was Llandovery Pontypool, and even though Llandovery won that game, we all came away from it, talking really positively about Pontypool, and how we thought, they look at a better side. Could this be the year they start, you know, climbing up that ladder again? Obviously, they spent a lot of time away from the top tier. They're now securely in it for the foreseeable future. How did you what did you make of Pontypool's season run?
Yeah, it's like I said, a really solid start, but I think very quickly we started to see their frailties. We mentioned they're not as strong as the top four away from home, but they also lost far too many of those big clashes, whether it's home or away. And it wasn't like they were always close. I mean, you only go look at the Evervale boxing game tie. You win the 1 week, you go, here we go. Chance you to really claw back up the table, get into that top four, and they score 3 points, and the gap is over 30. And it's all of a sudden that's 2 weeks apart, and they get the win and then sort of at home, and then they get hammered away, and it's that sort of imbalance. It's disappointing. They haven't kicked on, I'll be honest, and I still think that is an over reliance on a few individuals in their squad, but also academy allocations may I don't even know if they want to say hinder them, but I'll go into those in a little bit. But you look at the fact that when you start seeing the likes of Scott Matthews or Morgan Allen missing out, you start to see the effect in the performance. Obviously, Mikey Herbert's the other one in that sort of pack that gels it all together. But they're not a side that I look at and think they're going to smash someone up front in that top four. But equally, I think that they need a bit more firepower behind. I think they lack that spark out wide or something, something to change up the sort of the usual. And going on then to the Dragons Academy, they've had the highest allocation of the three Gwent clubs. You've got the likes of Dylan KG, Sam Scarf moving on to the Dragons. Morgan Lloyd's already starting to move on. Hugh Anderson's moved. You can start to see where a spine of this side all the way throughout is really, is in and out all season, and that doesn't really help. And that's the one thing I feel do Pontypool lack not an identity, but are they being true to themselves and giving themselves the best opportunity to be successful by having these ups and downs? And I don't think this squad depth is also great. I mean, yeah, they made signings now, but Roger Cole was in on permits at the end of the season, was playing well, and that's because Morgan Allen wasn't available. Now, do is it in the spirit of the league and the competition that if your Dragons Academy allocation isn't available, you haven't recruited well enough to fill your scrum half position in this case, that you can just permit somebody from a top three club in the league below? Neath was still playing their season at the time because they had an overrun of fixtures as well, including 3 games in a week at one stage. So it's disappointing for me, and I get we've mentioned the gap, and there isn't really a gap closing. Realistically, it's 2 points, and that's without including inflation, should we call it? That's not without the sort of change of fixtures. And I really expect them to kick on by now. Um, they've got an experienced squad. They had quite a lot of youngsters coming in, and they didn't really do it in the cup either, which is disappointing for me.
Yeah. So they do kind of have. I don't want to say it as an extenuating factor, but obviously the issues surrounding their head coach leaving and Tom Hancock then stepping into the role. Whether or not there was a plan for Tom to become head coach in due time or not is really not the question here. But that sort of situation, that unease can sort of push things back. So they do have that to contend with. Like you said, they have already done vast majority of their business for next season. And whilst we will always try and be as positive about all the teams as we possibly can, I'm not seeing it as any sort of signings that's going to push them further.
Yeah.
It's hopefully there's still one or two more to come. We're not expecting these teams to be signing, big X factor names that everybody knows and whatever. It just doesn't happen anymore. I haven't happened for a long time. But you'd like to see just someone, maybe someone who's solidified themselves in the league from another team. Someone like Lloyd Lewis, say from Newport. If he was just suddenly coming over thinking, hang about now, he can create something from nothing. It starts making you think this is where they want to be. And it's the same with other clubs. If you're signing someone who's just been released from the senior academy or even the senior squad, someone like Sean Evans down at the Scarlets, Taylor Davis, even those boys were released. They went into the clubs. I'm not sure what's happening with Sean just yet, but these aren't major signs. They are solid players and they will do you well in your first 15, 23, but they don't light a fire under you. They don't give you something in your belly. So let's have a bit of a closer look at their season by numbers. So 23-24 season, overall they'd won 13 and lost 12. One more than lost, 52% win percentage. This season, 12-1, 11 lost. So exact one more win than loss and just a slightly raised 52.17 win percentage. So nothing to really tell on the numbers, just that it's more of the same. I'd like to focus a little bit on their last game, that quarter final against Llandovery. 39-20 finished. And even though it was quite close till, well into the 70th, but it never felt like they were going to win the game.
Yeah, it sort of feels, and we've touched this on their sort of their stardom and their player quality, but it sort of doesn't ever feel that they've got that next level gear to kick on. And aside at Llandovery, you're always waiting. It doesn't matter how bad they're playing. They ain't going to be playing crap and losing 21-0 like they were against Cardiff. You're sort of going, okay, they're going to do something here. Yeah. Oh, hang on. No, they're going to do something now. Next play. Oh, hang on. And you always have that belief that there's the quality there to turn it around or to see it out or to do something special. And at the moment, Pontypool feel like their game plan is 15, 20 years out of date. They're like a smash mouth style. We'll drag it out at the park and in the mud and, make teams suffer up front. And it's like, well, it's moved on since then. And I think the way that they sort of had that game, it was very even possession wise, which probably says, right, Pontypool had a lot of ball in hand, but they never really troubled. I mean, there was a lovely try disallowed late on, rightly so. I'll say that straight away, rightly so disallowed. Scott Matthews was in front of the ball when he picked it up. But that just sort of says, well, that's the one bit of bright spark, and it's come from an illegal sort of maneuver. But where's that next level? Where's that sort of step up? Who's on that pitch saying, give me the ball, like a Levy, give me the ball, I'll chip over the top, I'll do anything, I'll run at them, I'll quick tap and go, something to change it. And then they couldn't actually withstand the late onslaught of Llandovery. 2 quick tries and the fixture's done. Literally gone.
Yeah, so I've been throwing about what grade to give these guys in my head because obviously no one broke into the C's last time out, and I'd like to give more C's than not, or at least that grade and higher. But I'm kind of struggling by here. I think if I'm being incredibly generous, I'm thinking C minus just for not going backwards.
Yeah, do you know what? I get what you mean, and it seems a difficult one because do you base it off themselves or do you base it off what we've given, say, Aberafon, the closest mark? But I mean, I'm leaning towards even just a D. And the reason for that is that I don't think there has been any progress this year. I think they've done exactly the same as last year. There's still a sizable gap towards the top 4 clubs. They haven't kicked on in the cup competition. They were relatively poor in that one. So it's, for me, just a flat D. Probably shows us where they are. And it sounds harsh for the top 5 side, but it's all context, I guess.
Yeah, and we do have to take everything in context, and this isn't just the state of the league. Just because you're in that top half doesn't mean you've had a top half season. Especially by your own standards, which is what we have all come to expect. So I'll take you on that. I'll go with the D. Now into 4th, and we've got cup winners and what was it, semi-finalists?
Semi-final, yeah.
In the league, Llandovery. So it's Llandovery. We've already touched on him a little bit inadvertently already.
Yeah.
Not a great season by their standards, or at least their standards of, let's say, the last 3 years. That opening patch of games that they just couldn't get a win. Obviously, 2 of them were against Ebu Vale, and it did take that last minute penalty to win that second game. It was 28 all, I believe, at the time. But after that, they sort of reignited into life. They won something like, was it 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12 games, including the cup now, something like 12 games on the bounce. But then they took a hammering off Cardiff, which, it did come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Went down to Swansea, had a game to forget, really, against Bridgend, because I don't know how I'm still, this is probably about the 5th time I've mentioned it on the podcast. I'm still racking my head at how they've managed to lose that game. And then that semi-final performance. I mean...
Yeah, it's a topsy-turvy season, isn't it? Really, like you said, you take the cup competition into thing. They walked their pool comfortably, and let's be honest, walked the final comfortably in the end as well. But their league season, and probably a bit of context was having to play a load of games away to start and stuff like that. Not a great excuse. I still expect them to be winning most of those. But as you say, they sort of put that big run together when it mattered, won the cup, came out the back end of that, and it was almost as if they said, all right, boys, let's have a bit of a rest. And then just sort of fell flat again. A couple of uncharacteristic sort of performances and defeats within sort of succession. They were winning and losing on and off. and that sort of pushed them down a bit there. Newport then overtook them and comfortably finished above them. But I got to be honest, I think even though, as we say, oh, yeah, they've done the double, they've won every competition the last couple of years between them. So it's a tough one, but I'll be honest, I think we are grading them against their standards. They have still won the cup and they walked there. They did finish fourth. They went into a semi final. It was a narrow defeat against an Ebervale side that at that point hadn't lost at home. Obviously, only lost one game at home as well. And I'll be honest, I thought Euros was a bit not disrespectful to Ebervale, but in his comments after the game, it was all they'd thrown it away. There was, they really disappointed. Yeah, they were going to be disappointed, but they didn't throw that game away. Ebervale made some changes. They changed one winger, and that was the end of Landevry's wide attack. If you go back and watch it, you change that one winger, and Landevry didn't have an outside channel attack for the rest of the game.
And that is Rob Review on the semi-final.
Thank you. Mic drop on the podcast. Landevry, I'm going for a B, mates. I think they deserve a B. I'll be honest, you could probably argue whether it's a B plus or minus. Either way, I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt because they won the cup. But yeah, I think B is probably right for a side that wins one of the two majors. So
let's just talk numbers then, a quick. So last season, the 23-24 year was exceptional. I am going to point that out. So 27 wins and 2 losses, 93.1% win. That is phenomenal. Into this season, 18 wins and 7 losses. So, only 72% in that winning category. That's over 20% drop. Now, even whether or not you're going from an exceptional season to a normal season, that's massive. I could have taken 10, 15 at an absolute maximum push. But to drop that much when the teams around you hadn't really improved that greatly, because we're looking at the teams they lost against, and Ebervale does obviously account for 3 of those games.
Oosh, get in there.
Oosh. Yeah, he has to have that. We do have to mention that, Bridgend, Swansea, and RGC are a part of that. And those are 3 sides that, when you're in that top 4, the only teams you really find yourself saying, okay, I can deal with that loss, is other sides in that top 4. So to lose that many against those teams not in and around, it hurts. Now, I follow Llandudno. I wouldn't class myself, as a diehard, as a fan. I'll follow them and I'll enjoy watching them. I'll get behind them, but they're not my team in this league. So I think B is still too high for them. I really do.
No, do you know? I do know what you mean. As you say, it's probably the manner of the way they lost a few of them as well, right? Like you said, there's 7 losses across the season, 3 to Ebervale, 1 to Cardiff. Those are games. Obviously, you wouldn't have wanted to have lost that many to Ebervale, but those are probably 4 games you go, okay. But it's the manner that they lost them. That Cardiff game was awful. Yes, Cardiff are really good. I was at that game, and there was a couple of us going, that's the best 40 minutes of rugby we've seen at any level. Everything just was going right. But then equally, when you come out of a cup win, you're on a high, you're defending your double, it's on. Your cup is in the bag, that's in the locker room. You then, like I said, go away and lose a few games to sides in the bottom 5. And uncharacteristic. I mean, that Swansea game was not a close game. That was a blowout, 6-pointer if I'm correct.
Yeah, 42-24.
That's just an absolute blown out the water performance. And Cardiff's sort of result as well, that came post then. And it's like, well, Was there a bit of they just hit the wall towards the end of the season? Did they do something that a lot of top sides do, and that's they just overplay their games? They played obviously 3 years of winning the trophy in a row, the double the year before, so it obviously gone all the way in the cup, win the cup. You played a lot of league fixtures, and then it's like you just hit that wall. And I don't know whether it was, but I'll be honest, you could actually make the case for them being a C. It depends on how much you want to weight the cup, right? But like you said, I would probably argue down to a C.
I'm happy with a C. I can accept a C. I really didn't want to give them in the top as I was coming off the season, but obviously time to reflect and emotions have been put to one side. So there we go. Next up, team that finished in third, and that just happened. Should we be reviewing them now? Should we
Let's
review them
review it now.
now?
They finished third.
They finished third. Okay, we'll do it in order. So Newport RFC, the Black and Ambers, 24-25 Super Rugby Cymru League champions. And start of the season, we all said it was Llandovery and Newport were the teams to beat. Ebbw managed to do Llandovery quite a few times, but they didn't get Newport in that one that mattered. And for Newport to get the win at Ebbw, when, like you said, undefeated all season, went to Llandovery, took the shield, defended it all the way through. Personally, I think they should have been defended in these playoff games as well, but for some reason...
Jesus Christ, all these bad ideas you're coming up with, let's just give Newport a fucking B and get on with it.
A B, you can't give them a B.
No, you're right.
League champions.
Let's give them a C.
I was thinking F. Oh, never mind. Come on then, Newport. This Gwent region day, really, isn't it? We got 3 of them in this, so
yeah. These are probably tougher than Llandovery to rank, I'll be honest, because I would probably weight the league more than the cup. But they didn't really do a lot in the cup. So already you're away from perfect marks, obviously. In the league, as you said, we quite often mention this. They didn't put many 80-minute performances in across the regular season. We spoke about Jack Lloyd in the run up to the playoffs, probably 3 weeks out, and that sort of six games, 7 week periods was where they played their best rugby and got better as it sort of went on. But I don't think that they played sublime rugby for a lot of it. I think they was themselves having a long season. Obviously, they're 150th year as well. But you walk away with your first league title, isn't it? 10, 13 years, somewhere in that sort of region. I'm trying to think back now. It's been over a decade, I believe, since they last won what would have been a Premiership trophy. And you sort of think, well, is a B sort of there? Because I feel that whilst they won the league, they did finish third. They walked away with 5 losses, which is the same as Cardiff and Ebbw above them. Only one fewer loss than Llandovery beneath them. Yes, they did it when it mattered, but I don't think it was a flawless season to be given an A, I'll be honest.
That's when we take in performances into account. Now, if we just look at flat out results, they won 12 of their last 14 games, and the 2 that they lost were both at Eugene Cross.
There's a pattern emerging here, Matt. There's a pattern emerging. I think we know who's getting A fucking plus. Come on.
Yeah, so like we said, when you're in that top 4, and the only team outside of the top 4 that they lost to was Pontypool in a 17-14 loss, but that's a derby game, so there's that little bit of spice added to it. So I don't see on paper I don't see nothing wrong with this season. 3 wins in the cup. Obviously, you needed that fourth one to break the final. Will be different this coming season. So, if they'd fast forwarded a year, would it have been a double? We just don't know. So I'd
No.
he's saying no flat out already. So let's have our little look at those infamous numbers because they're not always nice to everyone, even though that you think, oh, these team has done well, blah blah blah. They're not always nice, even when you do
Was
do
it
really
16
well.
and 16-7, is it this season?
Yeah, so 23-24, they were 22 wins, 5 losses, just over 81% win success. This year, 19 wins and 6 losses. So that's only a 76% win margin. But that did include the 3 knockout games that got them the league title. And if the semi final was at home, if they'd finished second, I don't think I'd have an issue giving them an A.
Yeah,
But
I know what you mean. It feels like not that they didn't do enough. They were only a point behind Ebervale and 4 points behind Cardiff. But as you say, is it enough? And I'll be honest, I don't think anyone's getting an A this year.
no.
Um, but yeah, and that's what I think. There's too many mitigating things. I mean, I looked last season. I give an A plus to Landovery for doing a double. It was flawless. We've already mentioned the numbers from last year. That's the standard for A plus. So you're looking 85% for an A, maybe somewhere around there. You're probably gonna have to be fighting on both fronts as well in that. But this season, even though they won the league, it just feels that it's not to them. It'll be an A plus season, right? But I don't think if you take everything into consideration, that you're looking at B plus. I'll be honest, it is a B plus.
Yeah, I've got B plus in my head. I think that's well deserved, really well deserved. And again, we spoke a little bit about this with Llandovery. They weren't playing well, and you expect something to come out. This is what Newport have done all season. They haven't peaked, which is quite scary because this we could be looking at what we saw. What was it 2-3 years ago with Llandovery? They got that first league title, and then they just got better and better. Could we be seeing Newport on a bit of a run like that? Could we see them go up a level next season? That's going to be interesting one to follow because they're not going to want to give this title over to anyone, not by choice at least. So B plus for Newport. And now we come into probably the quickest section of this entire podcast this week. Ebu Vale, they won some,
A
they lost
plus.
some. They choked in every final they played in. Nah, yeah, a bit of fishing. You can't go wrong with a bit of fishing. It's all fun. So, started the season, you couldn't have asked for, you know, a better start. Obviously, there was that second game anomaly where you went to cap and, well, someone wearing Eberville t-shirts went to cap because it wasn't a normal performance that day. Like I think I can remember you saying yourself, it just didn't feel right at the time. But you done a double over Llandovery, that first.
Triple. Let's call it a triple, Mark. Come on.
We'll get to it. We're still talking early part of the season. I was talking about the head-to-head round, the round 3,
Okay.
round 4, back to
Okay.
back, which we are going to see again next season. There are 2 back to backs, which
Rival
is
round.
rival
Just
round. That's what it is.
yes.
So obviously you conquered your rival round, and it wasn't then until Christmas that you took your next loss. So really great season from your account. I mean, what were you? Were you third the season before or fourth?
We were fourth,
No,
no,
third.
third the season before. Travelled to Newport.
Yeah, so you've done really well. You finished second, which is an improvement. You've got to a cup final, which I want to say is an improvement. I can't remember
Yeah, they had the defeat to Llandovery in the semi
semi.
final. It was all the semi finals last year. Llandovery in the cup and Newport in the league.
So there you go. You've gone a step further in the league table, in the cup, and in the league playoffs. So relatively speaking, for yourselves, regardless of what the win percentages say, which I will come to in a minute, it's been a really positive season to be, with Eberville.
Yeah, I think that's always it. It's always a transition. Jason Strange said in the end of season do Ebervale have done things the right way. They've made sure that they've spent well beneath the cap. The bottom three with the spending, it's local talent, smart utilization of an academy and not an over reliance. A lot of players know the fans know the players name by name, and that is what Ebervale needs. I don't think it works if Ebervale try and do it any differently. A first cup final since 1998. And again a step forward from a semi-final hammering to the final. It didn't go their ways, but you can say, well, if you look at the wider context, up at Llandovery on artificial surface, you lose Don Franchi inside a couple of minutes, John Evans off the bench within a minute. Everything basically goes against you there. Like you said, he's unbeaten in the league, win the Shields, go through the playoffs, take out a good, resilient Quinn side, have a massive comeback against Llandovery, who were looking very good, smart tactical play, and then just didn't turn up at all. Handed it to Newport in the final, really. And that was what was most disappointing. I think was the manner of the final performance. So yeah, I think everything. I probably exceeded what people were expecting at the start of the season. I think if you said you'd been in two finals, you'd have probably gone right. Let's take one win. But yeah, I think overall a step forward from last season, which is what you want. If it's your club, you want them to be able to step on and then sort of kick on. I still don't think they creep into the A categories. I think losing the semi-finals, losing both of the finals is far too much of an impact to get it. We probably are looking B plus again.
Yeah. So those vital numbers. So 23-24 season, you won 20 games and lost 8, 71.4% win. This season, won 19, lost 7, a 73, well, just over 73% winning margin. So you're exactly the same. You've won one game less and you've lost one game less, but due to the numbers, your percentage has actually increased. But for the fact of you've gone up a position in the league, you've made that cup final, you've made that league final, it is worthy of a B. It really is. And honestly, I think a win in either of them final takes you into an A. It
Yeah,
really does. That's the significance of a win in one of them games. Just because of what it would mean for the club. Now, going forward to really, Christ, to break an A now next season, it is probably going to take a little bit more. You're probably you need to win at least something, and either do the double or come first in the league as well to really break that barrier. This is the standards that these clubs are setting themselves. It is really, really difficult when you've looked back a year and then you go, well, how have we really done? So I'm happy to give Ebu a B. I think it's fully deserved. Well done to them. But you've given yourselves quite a task to try and go one better, or even two or three. You never know. could be first in the league and win both. Who knows? Crazier things have happened. Crazier things have happened. So, our final team, our league leaders, Cardiff. Now, I'm not sure on how I feel about Cardiff because it's been all season and pardon me, they've had tremendous backs. Their forwards have, I don't want to say they've let them down because obviously they haven't let them down, but they've been that area where you can
They
see
haven't
there's
been
room for
devastating.
improvement. Yeah.
Have they? They haven't been that usual use the Cardiff pack that that rolling ball with Alan Reese, etc.
Yeah. And, just like with Llandudry, they've had, a few weird losses in there. I mean, Carmarthen Quins early on, RGC and Bridgen both in the cup. You're like, ooh, what's going on here? Because I know they treated the cup completely differently. They put out such, different squads to what we had been seeing. I mean, I think there was at least 10 changes in, every single match day squad in, during that Six Nations period, during the SRC Cup. So it must have been hell for the players to try and adjust and just get a game plan and go in. So I'm not a Cardiff fan. We've already established that many, many moons ago. On paper, if you just look at this normal, you'd go, oh, they've had a good season. They probably should have done more in the playoffs. Finishing first in the league. You'd expect that team to be making the final, but they haven't. It's been what they made the final 2 years ago, I believe it was against Llandudry.
Delivery at Elms Park.
But then what you do need to take in consideration, okay, where were they a year ago? They were fourth in the league, and they were, and let me get up now. They were 26 points off second and 27 off first, so they were well off pace for the top two last year, and they've managed to turn that around in the league. They have improved on that front. They've gone into first place. That's got to be, respected. So if I just give a couple of their numbers now, so 23-24, obviously 160 drew one, lost 10, 59, just over 59% win. This year, 115 and lost 9, so a 62.5% win. But unlike the teams around them, they really didn't care. And I hate to say that, they didn't care in the cup. So 3 of them losses were just there we are. And I'm not going to dismiss those totally because they happened. They need to be taken into consideration. But we do have that context of that wasn't a full strength or even a close to full strength Cardiff 23 going at there. So how are you feeling about these guys?
Yeah, I think initially you sort of look at them and go, they've had a bad season. They finished top, but as you said, you sort of throw it all away when you put in the semi-final performance that they did. It was not a good performance. But I also look at their sort of season and think they struggled around Christmas, where they had a lot of under-20s go away and players into seniors, etc. The cup, they disrespected. They didn't disrespect it, but it wasn't in what it's not in the spirit of what it should have been. It's not a development competition, for God's sake. And ultimately, that will come back. They were done as soon as they lost to Llandovery in round 1 last year. And that will reflect on their season. And similar to Ebervale, a very good regular season is probably downgraded via playoff, how they went out in the playoffs or how they ended up in the cup. And personally, I think purely based off how good they did in the regular season of the league, they get a B minus. Like I said, they've jumped up since last season. There's context as to their pinch points around losing players and sort of how they played the cup competition. But yeah, I don't think they're any higher than a B minus. I'll be honest.
Yeah, so I had C plus in my head to start off, so B
Yeah.
minus is certainly in that realm, and I can accept a B minus for them. But for me now, obviously, I'll settle on a B minus. But just like we've spoken before about, this is the standard we set ourselves. How do we, go one better next season? So, even though they didn't make either final, and they haven't got the highest of grades, they've probably got the biggest margin to lose, really, because they can't finish any higher in the league. The only thing they can hope for is a much better cup run, and keep winning those games in the playoffs. It's probably going to take a fair bit for them to really push themselves on now. And the question is, can they do it? Now, we have seen a bit of it with some sides who do rely on those academy allocations. Obviously, Cardiff are a major one because, technically speaking, they have all of 20 of Cardiff Senior Academy assigned with them because there's no one else. And obviously, you travel further west. This Llandovery and Carmarthen Quins are the only two down there, and you can see, obviously, you've had your say on Carmarthen Quins quite vividly on their reliance on those players and what happens when they're not there. So it's going to be intriguing because I don't know a lot of the boys that are going to be coming into the senior academy with the Ospreys, Dragons, and Cardiff. I don't know what these first years are going to be like. Are they ready for the step up? Are they going to hit the ground running? Whereas I'm comfortable talking about the boys down west, but
Do you know what
these
as
ones.
well? Is the recruitment is always a weird one, right? Because you see players come in. I think their recruitment's all right. I think they're losing some really good players. But it all comes down and Cardiff have always been the same in the last 10, 15 years. They've always been the same. Doesn't matter how good the core squad is when are they going to get those players being dropped in from the academy or senior players coming back at crucial times for the big games, the derbies? And that's what it always boils down to. You sort of never really know where they're sitting because you could play 8 weeks of a season, have that Cardiff Newport game, whatever Cardiff Llandovery, and then all of a sudden you got boys, and I know it won't be the same this season, but like your Mackenzie Martins, etc., dropping down. He's like, hang on a minute, that's a Welsh international in the last 12 months, and now he's playing up with Church Bank. And that's where their recruitment always ends up. You can't make a fair judgment call with your predictions. You got to go with best knowledge really, and sort of probability of them having some decent support aiding them along.
So, wow, that brings us to the end of the 24-25 season. And I'm a little bit sad. This was the first year of the SRC podcast. I think it's been positive. Not going to call it a success because I think we started with something like 20 presenters. We're now down to just me and Rob as a stand. John hasn't figured out how to put a baby to sleep yet. We're hoping you can figure it out by September. I hope you're listening, John. You'll enjoy that one. And yeah, no, it's been good. It's been good to talk about. It's been good to try and promote the league. And we all love these clubs. We all love this rugby. We love Welsh rugby. We love everything about it. And we got to do whatever we can. For some people, that's paying a bloody subscription fee for some random, I don't know, merch or I don't know, some kids club or whatever. If you pay it, you pay bloody $5 for your club for a season ticket for your bloody 16-year-old or whatever, even though you don't end up going. Yeah, everyone does their little bit to help support their club, and this is what we are trying to do. We're trying to promote, and we've done well. We've got engagement from every single club, so that's really good. Hopefully we'll bring you a fair bit more next season. Perhaps get a few of the players to have a little chat. I know Rob has definitely got a face telling us that he really wants that to happen. Audio listeners, he is a rock. You couldn't get blood out of him if you tried. And if he ever cracks a smile, I'm afraid the whole podcast would implode. But there we are. Rob, you've been with me since the beginning. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to everyone listening. Please like, share, subscribe, give us a 5-star review, call us shit, call us whatever you want. Just make sure there's 5 stars.
I will have an argument with someone over Twitter on this summer.
Oh, that sounds like a bit of fun. That sounds like what Double R is.
Call us shit.
Yeah, probably have to talk about certain clubs near Port Talbot that aren't, top level or something. But yeah, there we are. The season is done. Thank you so much for bearing with us and, dealing with some of those stupid rants on the time. And we will be back next season to bring more of it again.
We will.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you, sir. Been a pleasure.
Time we said goodbye. North Star forever. Only for a couple of months. Try, guys.